Mic'd up.
Welcome everybody to Hall of Fame Conversations. My name is John Reger, a PGA golf professional, and on behalf of the Florida Sports Hall of Fame, we like to have casual conversations with our members in the Hall of Fame and upcoming members, who we have one on the air today. I'm joined by Barry Smith, who is a Florida Sports Hall of Famer. He was famous for his record-setting career as a wide receiver for the Florida State Seminoles, plus played in the NFL with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, most notoriously was part of the 1976 team that went reverse undefeated. So
Thank you very
Barry,
much.
you're welcome. Barry, you're in the class of 2022 in the Florida Sports Hall of Fame. So we have a very special guest today. We have somebody coming into the class of 2023. This gentleman was the first African-American punter in the NFL. Drafted by the Cincinnati Bengals, joined the Cleveland Browns in 1977, punter for the Minnesota Vikings for 10 years, and finished up his career with the Washington football team in 1988. 2021 Black College Hall of Fame inductee. Plus, a lot of fun things out there about him, but he's also, his most recent grandchild rival is Amir Assad Coleman, just arrived in the world, doesn't look like too long ago. So congratulations on that. Everybody, let's welcome Greg Coleman.
Welcome aboard, Greg.
Thank you, Robbie Barry. It's great to be with you, man. And anytime you can be a part of anybody's Hall of Fame, that means that somebody has taken the time to pump the brakes, to look back far enough to look at your body of work. And I am so elated and honored to be in the class of 2023. And I tell you what, I don't care how many organizations that you've been a part of, this never gets old, baby.
Well, that's great to hear. You know, for our listeners out there, this is brought to you by Mic'd Up Social. It's an app that you can download on your Apple or your Google, and it's meant to make some of the folks that you see and you read about and you hear about come alive. And that's our goal with the Florida Sports Hall of Fame. We actually have a website that, and Greg's going to be inducted in Jacksonville, Florida, which I understand is his hometown. And we're going to do that in November, on November 8th at the Florida Theater in Jacksonville. And the purpose of this interview today is really just to make Greg come alive for the folks that follow our Hall of Fame and some of the young folks out there that want to listen to the folks that have played the game, played any game, but also more importantly learned a lot about the life lessons. And I know Greg certainly is one of those. So with that, I'm going to let Barry ask the first question because you've got a long list, Barry. So we're going to jump right in with you.
Well, this first one here, I'm going to date myself, but, Greg and I were, within a few years of one another playing collegiately. And, of course, even though I was from Miami and Greg was from Jacksonville, we wound up in Tallahassee, and Greg, it was obviously outstanding FAMU Rattler, their Hall of Fame. But, Greg, did you ever go to a place in Tallahassee called the Electric Eye? Okay, you have to answer it.
You tell me anybody who darted the city limits of Tallahassee that did not spend at least a little time in the eye, as we called it.
Yep.
You didn't complete the college experience until you spent some time in the Electric Eye.
Greg, we're there in Tallahassee, and all of a sudden be like maybe close to the end of practice or something like that. Somebody go, "Hey, what are you doing tonight?" You just kind of go, "Yeah." John, just say it was an infamous. I tell you what, they had one heck of a dance floor.
Yes, indeed.
Place was happening. Okay, but anyway, yeah, it was good. It was good. So anyway, all right. Thanks for answering that one. That was my first question. Now everything else is great.
And you know what, for our listeners out there, if you're coming to the enshrinement, that may not be included in the interview on stage with all the other enshrinees in the audience out there, but that sounds like a lot of fun. And just to restate the purpose of why we're doing this is to make Greg's story come alive. And Greg, one of the most interesting things that I noticed about you was the fact that after your career, a lot of players struggle sometimes because, and you played in an era, even though that yeah, I'm sure that you had great compensation. Nothing like today. I mean, I was reading where a kicker or something had like a $20 million contract for the Colts or something like that. I'm like, my goodness.
Well,
So, but so after football, a lot of times in Barry and I have noticed this where you have quite a few players out there. Sometimes they're a little lost of what to do and how to do it, but you certainly weren't. So tell us a little bit about not only during your playing days. We'll get into that, but what you did after your playing days.
well, I think preparation was the most important thing. The nurturing that I got at FAMU, the nurturing that I got it from my family, and understood at a very early age that football was not a lifelong career, that it was a means to an end. And we were fortunate enough here in Jacksonville to have a number of professional players who had gone on to the league who would come back during the course of the offseason, talking about Harold Carmichael, Kenny Burroughs, Harold Hart, Ken Riley, who was from Bartow, but he lived in Jacksonville during the off season, and I was blessed and fortunate enough to have Ken 2 off seasons in a row as my homeroom teacher, as he was doing some substitute teaching at Range High School. So we had a group of athletes who would come back and work out at Range High School, and after they worked out, they would talk with us, and we would work out with them sometimes. So they would tell us the ins and outs of the National Football League, because we thought that, quote unquote, the NFL was a pocket full of money, 2 girls on each arm in a big car. But man, did they debunk those myths right away and talked us about what it took to be a pro, what it means to handle your business, what it means to take care of your finances, and all of those things. And all of the guys that you hung out with uh, growing up, there was a season for that, and that you could not take everybody with you to the professional ranks. So, a long story short, to get around that, after I was drafted by Cincinnati, I was cut. I did not make it my first year out of FAM. So I came back and I had to get a job. So that gave me a dose of reality right away that this dream is not everything that it's cracked up to be. And it can be taken away at a moment's notice, whether it was from a coach's decision, an injury, or your decision. So when I got that next opportunity, I looked at it every practice, every game, like it was my last one. And that's how I prepared, and that's how I played the game. Because again, knowing that it was short lived, but having that mindset, um, I fooled them for about 12 years before they figured out I wasn't that good.
That's fantastic. I know that before we came on the air, Barry, I was telling Greg that my dad played 12 years in the NFL. And he was an all-pro linebacker with the Steelers and the Washington football team. And so we moved to Tampa. And my dad had a little restaurant in Tampa. And I remember when he said, now we're Bucks fans, 76. My dad says, hey, we're Bucks fans. I said, well, Dad, I mean, hey, you're a big time Steeler. Nope, but we're Bucks fans. So one of my favorite players on the team is a guy named Dave Green. And the reason why, he was the punter, because you saw him play all the time. He was constantly putting. So punters have become one of my favorite players out there.
Well, definitely, John, thank you again for pointing it out. Yeah, 76 was, we had a very poor offense, and Dave got one hell of a workout. One thing you mentioned about Dave in 76, Hugh Culverhouse, let's say he was a very frugal owner. We did not have a punter and a kicker. We had Dave Green, who punted and kicked. Culverhouse got a twofer with Dave Green. And by the way, Dave Green sends his best. Greg saw him yesterday. He was at the creamsicle reunion, and still a character.
And talking about Greenos, and that's what we called him. He was actually a part of that group of punters and kickers at Cincinnati when I went there. It was Dave Green, it was
Yep.
Pat McAnally, and they drafted Chris Barr from Penn State. Because Barry, believe it or not, I thought I was a better place kicker than I was punter. And not having the opportunity to kick actually against Chris Barr really kind of chapped my hide a little bit.
Yep.
And the mere fact that I had to punt after practice, I made the mistake of running the 40 and 4-4. So Paul Brown comes over and says, "Hey, you got too much dang on speed to just punt. So why don't you go over there with the wide receivers?" Hey,
Yep.
Coach Brown, I never played wide receiver. Well, just go over there with Chip Myers and Isaac Curtis and those guys, and they'll tell you what to do. So they ran the hell out of me during training camp, and then I would have to compete against Greenos and McAnally and everybody else who they brought into camp to punt and kick. It was unfair. So I knew that that was not going to work in my favor. But Dave and I developed a very good, strong relationship when we were with Cincinnati, and when I got my shot at Cleveland. Punters and kickers are a very small fraternity. So got a lot of love for Dave Green, man. He's one of my favorites.
Well, that's fantastic. You mentioned at Cincinnati, one of my favorite, Isaac Curtis. Isaac and I came out in the same year, '73, in the draft. Got to play with Isaac in a couple All-Star games, and always had a lot of respect for Isaac. To me, he's one of the most smoothest wide receivers there was. I used to, because we obviously played Cincinnati a few times, and would watch some of the his highlights, and he's something else. Yeah,
I tell you, two of
class.
the two of the smoothest guys. You mentioned Isaac Curtis. The other that I had the fortunate to see him at the tail end of his career was Paul Warfield.
Oh,
Warfield took me under his wing. Paul was one of the guys. It was Paul Warfield, Gerald Irons, and um, Hill, Calvin Hill.
yeah,
It was a tail end of their careers at Cleveland, but they took me under their arms as a rookie coming into Cleveland. So I have seen up close and personal how smooth Paul Warfield was, and you never heard the ball hit his hands. And you know what I'm talking about as a
yeah,
receiver. He had
yeah.
such soft hands. The only other receiver that I've seen match that skill was Chris Carter when he was with the Minnesota Vikings and I
Right,
was doing broadcasts. Yeah, absolutely.
good one. Yeah, never shortage of talent. Yeah, I got it changing a little bit here since we're kind of bouncing around. One of the things that when I followed your career, one of the things that I was always that what we have in common is you were also a high hurdler. And I think I went back and I was checking. I happened to see, I went down and maybe, I don't know, 2 or 3 years after I won the state championship, there's a kid named Greg Coleman winning the state championship, the high hurdles, 100, back then, 120-yard high hurdles like that. So I'd love, how did you wind up running the high hurdles? We all have a story how we got there, as opposed to you could run, the 100 or the 200 or something like that. Why the highs?
Well, because number one, it was something that everybody else couldn't do.
Yep.
I've all
I like this guy already.
in all of my athletic prowess, whether it was baseball, football, or track, I was a catcher in baseball because very few people wanted to catch. I ran the hurdles because very few people wanted to get their knees scarred up and beat up. And I was a punter and a kicker because I didn't want anybody hitting on me. So I've been very special my entire life, and hurdles came as watching it on the Olympics, watching it on television whenever it came on. It was a very special event, and I said, "Hey, I'm pretty special, so why don't I do that?" So I worked my tail off. Bear,
Yep.
there were very few people who had the knowledge of teaching hurdles. So you taught by trial and error. And then we had a gentleman that came over the range by the name of John Timbrook, who had some skill in technique and hurdles. So I read and looked at everything. I watched different hurdlers. The guys before me, James Rackley from Lee and
Yep.
Kenny Lambert from Jackson. Those were the guys that were in front of me. So started running hurdles in junior high school and migrated up to high school and fortunate enough to get a scholarship to FAMU with Coach Bobby Lang running hurdles there because very few people and let's talk. I'll set the stage here. Very few colleges back in the day when you talk about major institutions here in the Southeast, wanted to have a black punter, a black kicker,
Right.
because we had just broken the barrier of having the black quarterback at most of the large SEC schools, University of Florida, Florida State, University of Miami, in that area. And I remember coaches telling me, Greg, we just got our alumni set to accept the fact that we're going to have a black quarterback. I don't think I can take a black kicker at the same time. And fortunately enough, we had two kids from our high school. My captain, Don Gaffney, was the first black quarterback at the University of Florida, followed by Terry LeCount, who was a
Oh,
sophomore
yeah.
my senior year,
Right.
both out of the same high school. So, that was disappointing. But Coach Bobby Lane came to my house and said, Miss Coleman, sat at my table and said, Miss Coleman, if Greg comes to Florida A&M, we don't have a whole lot of money to put an addition on the back of your house or give him a car or even give his girlfriend a scholarship. And I'm not saying that that's what those schools did back then. He just wanted to make a point. He said, but if he comes to Florida A&M, he can run track, he can kick into his heart, his content. And if he goes to class, I guarantee you he'll graduate. Oh, Miss Coleman, one last thing. We'll feed him 3 meals a day. My mama said, give me that damn pen. You ain't seen how this boy eat.
Yep.
So that's how I wound up at FAMU and had an amazing career. And if I had to do it all over again, I'd do it the same way because of the nurturing that I got from teachers and coaches and mentors, and even the student body. It was just a great experience.
And that's one thing I could say. I ran in the FAMU relays because you remember that was one of the first outdoor meets.
Yes, sir.
The same weekend as the NCAAs had the indoor track and field championships, the indoor. And so that was one of the, and usually it was on your track. And I believe back then it was a cinder or when I say sand, it was not like a tartan track or anything like that.
It was cinders. As a matter
Right.
of fact, I've got some old video that my kids watched many, many years ago and said, my God, Dad, what y'all were running on dirt?
Yeah. Uh-oh.
So let's get that squared away. If you got the will, you got the wherewithal. Let me tell you something. The style of track does not matter as long as everybody's running on the same track.
That's
And
right.
that's what we did. We made the best of it. And I remember some of those FAMU relays and what was it? 480-meter relay, hurdle relay, and all that stuff.
The,
Because you had some great hurdlers over there. You had Danny Smith and all those guys over there.
Yep, absolutely. Used to love to run it. The 480-yard high hurdle shuttle relay.
That's right.
Used to love to run that at the Florida relays there in Gainesville.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, John, we could probably move on because I think Greg and I could have a long conversation.
Yes, we could. Yes, we
Well,
could.
that's one of the reasons I never really got into track and field myself as an athlete because you couldn't take a golf cart. So you had to actually run and
Well,
do those things.
I got to say something before we leave track and field.
Yeah.
Along with the other things that I'm doing now, doing some professional speaking, writing a book and all of that stuff. But I am 2 years in, the executive director of the Bob Hayes Invitational Track Meet here in Jacksonville. My track coach, Coach James Day, was one of the original founders and the meet executive and all of those things. And unfortunately, when we made the decision to move back to Jacksonville a couple of years ago, unfortunately, he passed away. The mantle passed to me. So with my wife and I, we have been taking the Bob Hayes to another level. This year would be the 60th running of the Bob Hayes track meet. It had been at Rains High School for a number of years. We had outgrown the facility, went over to UNF and saw that track over there. And I said, my God, what young person would not want the opportunity to run on a world-class track like this? So we made the decision, a tough decision, to move over, but it wasn't tough because when one of the last things Bob Hayes told me before he passed, he said, Coleman, I don't care what you do, you keep it about the kids. And that's what this move has been all about. What's best for the young people in this community, our guests, and people that come into the track meet, and it's just been a wonderful experience. And we are just so happy with the partnership that we continue to have with Reigns and UNF. The third weekend in March it's a great weekend to come be a part of the Bob Hayes track meet. Coach
I'm
Stace.
writing that down.
Yes, sir. I think it's March 16th. Speaking of which, Hall of Fame, we had our Hall of Fame weekend that same weekend of the Bob Hayes track meet. We inducted Edwin Moses, Gail Devers, the 4x100 meter relay team from FAMU that retired the Peterson Cup, with the same four guys winning the 4x1 3 years in a row. Uh, Coach Freddie Stevens, Leander McKenzie from up in Tallahassee, great high school hurdler and collegiate hurdler, went to Florida State, followed you, Barry. So we had a great Hall of Fame class, and this class of 2024 will be just exceptional. So uh, we're so proud of the body of work that we're doing here for this community and the kids in the track and field world. So you're right. Put that on your calendar, man. I'm going to look for you.
Well, Greg, thank you for giving back to the community, because John and I talk about it. That's what we do, the Florida Sports Hall of Fame. We find ways to give back in different ways, but it's all about the kids and families.
It is, and even what we're doing here is just a small smidget of what we've done over our journey, or over the lifetime that God has given us. He's truly blessed us. And for the last 24 years, my wife Ella and I, we've hosted the Greg Coleman Celebrity Golf Tournament up in the Twin Cities area. So for the last 24 years, we have, probably been responsible for close to $3 million that's going to young people in the Minneapolis St. Paul area. The last 15 with the YMCA of the North, because I was a Y kid growing up here in Jacksonville. The YMCA on Cleveland Road taught me about leadership, taught me about sportsmanship, and learned how to swim there. So if we can do something to support young people, because all young kids are not going to hell in a handbasket. We've got some amazing kids doing some amazing things, and all they need is just a little bit of help, and that's what we're trying to do.
Well, that's absolutely fantastic. Hey, one of the things about the Mic'd Up Social app is that people actually, when we announce who's going to be on and this, that, and the other, people can actually download the app and actually record a question. So we do have a question here from Robbie, and I'm going to see if I can just push this button and play it. Let me see. Let me see what it says here. Yep, here we go. And I'm going to play this question for you, Greg, from Robbie.
Okay.
Hey, Greg. This is Robbie from the Highlights from Lowlife show here on the Mic'd Up app. A lot of people always ask what has changed in the game since your playing days. I'm curious to know what is still the same. What parts of the game really still hold up as they did when you were playing professional football? Thanks.
What a great question, Robbie. Thank you. The thing that remains consistent is the relationship with the players. Now, I have seen the game change from a game to a billion-dollar business, with all of the new stadiums, all of the new technology, all of the new equipment, the fact that gambling is now part of the National Football League. And I think the league was very, very specific before they allowed a team to go to Las Vegas, because they knew that was something that they were going to have to deal with, the gambling in sports betting and all of those things. So it is a business, a billion-dollar business, more than anything else. The other piece, when I went to Minnesota, we did not have a practice facility. We practiced outside at the old Metropolitan Stadium where the Minnesota Twins played. And our practices were almost maybe 2.5 to 3 hours max, because Bud and a lot of the players wanted to go fishing or hunting. I went home and watched The Young and the Restless, because I was not going ice fishing. I was not going hunting in the woods and in the snow. Some people, I tell this and they don't believe this, Barry. When I got to Minnesota during the winter, we got on a bus and we drove around the Twin Cities area and found a park that didn't have a whole heck of a lot of snow. And the rookies got out with brushes and shovels and all of those things and brushed off a little enough space for us to work out. And we worked out for maybe 35, 40 minutes, got back on the bus and went back home. That was the extent. We had one universal gym. My high school at Range High School had more weights than the Minnesota Vikings did when I went to the Vikings. So Robbie wanted to know how things have changed.
Oh my Lord.
It is a
Wow.
24-hour business now. Guys eat, they sleep. They get treatment overnight there. Some coaches spend the night there. So a lot of things have changed, but the most consistent thing is what happens between the lines. It's blocking, tackling, and the relationships that players have together.
Yeah. Hey, Greg, I'm glad you shared that little story about your time there with the Vikings because, when I went to Green Bay, and it was obviously an eye opener. I'm from Miami. Okay, never saw snow till I got to Green Bay, but we had an outdoor. There was no indoor practice facility. It was outdoors, and then when Mother Nature turns, and it turns quick up in Green Bay,
Oh,
and
yeah.
and it's like in some of those days you can't practice a couple hours. You got 30, 45 minutes. That's all you could take. Um, and the bit about the universal machine, that's all we had. It was in the locker room. It was right in the middle of the locker room. And
That's right.
now, not that I was a big lifter because, technologies were different. There weren't a lot of guys that lifted. There were some, that did, but yeah, it's amazing how the game has changed. You go to $1 place and it's the Taj Mahal. I mean, they go in, 24 hours. They got a card and they go in. They can work out, relax, eat, whatever.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
No doubt.
Yeah, I
Well,
remember when my dad was playing. They get the same situation. Really, hardly anybody lifted weights, and so he would go from like unloading box cars, to get ready for training camp. He'd go dig ditches. But his last year, he figured it out. He played tennis. That's what he did to get in shape his last year to do it. But it has changed quite a bit with the
wow.
technology and the nutrition and all the science that you can apply. It's really amazing. Plus, the athletes and we have this. We say this in golf. You have athletes playing golf now. Like Tiger Woods is an athlete.
Yes.
Okay, but even in the old days, Arnold Palmer was an athlete. But
Mm-hmm.
yet you have everybody's an athlete now out on the PGA Tour. Well, it seems like is it true today that the players are bigger and faster even from 20 years ago?
Oh, absolutely. And they're stronger because, again, they work out 24/7, almost 12 months out of the year.
yeah,
And there is some guys take a little break. They may take 2 or 3 weeks off, go for a vacation with the fam or something like that. But then they're right back in there, honing their skills and trying to get stronger. And this body that God gave us is only able to take so much torque and tweaking, on muscles and ligaments and all of those things. But the medical technology has come so far, so fast. And you saw Aaron Rodgers the other night after torn Achilles. He's back out on the field throwing. I don't think he's doing any running or anything like that. But guys recover so fast because
yeah,
most take care of their bodies and what they eat and all of those. Tom Brady played till he was what, 43? That's an anomaly. It you may or may not see that again, but we said that many, many years ago that you weren't going to see a running back that played past 10 or 11 years. Now you had the kid from Buffalo, Latavius Murray. He's in his 10th year as a running back. Dalvin Cook is in his, 7th or 8th year in the league, and it seems like he just came out of the league, just came out of college a few years ago.
Well, it
yeah.
is amazing to watch. If George Blanda came around these days, he would be the first 80-year-old kicker in the NFL.
Yeah,
Well,
straight on.
I was fortunate enough to hold for Jan Stenerud, one of two place kickers in the Hall of Fame, Pro Football Hall of Fame, and Jan was in his early 40s, and what a treat holding for him and other kickers that came through Minnesota, because it's such an amazing art to watch these men in their craft.
Greg, one of the things that you have done, even though you're there in Jacksonville during the football season. As I remember, you're still or have been along. You were still involved in covering the Vikings football games.
Yeah, for the last 21 years, I was the sideline analyst for the Vikings radio network. And 2 years ago, my wife and I made a decision to step away. There was no isms or schisms. There was nothing wrong.
Right.
Contract, nothing. We just knew that there were some things that we wanted to do. God has given us a great journey, a great body of work in our past. So whatever time He gives us moving forward, we're going to do that together. And that's supporting our kids, help spoiling grandkids, coming back, sharing some principles with my professional speaking business, giving people a ray of hope. Because sometimes all you need is a word of encouragement to shift the atmosphere, to shift your mindset, to say I can instead of I can't. Because there were so many people that were in my body of work and in my journey that told me, Coleman, yes, you can. Pop Kittles, my kicking coach at Florida A&M, and I can remember we were practicing one day, and I was booming him, 40, 50 yards down the middle of the field, and Pop said, "Well, baby, why are you kicking it right down the middle?" I said, "Well, hell, Pop, that's where he's standing." He said, "Well, baby, I'll tell you this." He said, "If you kick it to the right and kick it to the left and make him run for it, and if you do it on a consistent basis, they'll find a place for you at the next level." And I was stupid enough to believe Pop Kittles. So whenever I
You
kicked it
did
to the right
it
and I kicked
really.
it to the left.
I,
And I knew that I had made it when Howard Cosell gave me this nickname, Coffin Corner Coleman.
yep.
When Howard gives you a nickname, I mean, that's synonymous with greatness.
Yep.
And it was because of words, and we all stand on the shoulders of somebody else. So if somebody needs to stand on my shoulders, so be it. And we just wanted to inspire and give, whether it's in ministry, whether it's in community, whether it's our family and each other. We just wanted to uplift those who chose to listen to those principles and rituals and habits that we learn during sports, playing sports. Because if you look at society as a whole, they will look in a minute for someone who has discipline, who has great habits, who's a team player, and all of those things. So athletes do make some of the great people in corporations and in corporate America.
Yep. One of the players that I truly love and a great deal of respect. You were teammates with Chuck Foreman. Chuck Foreman, you know, of course, is just my own opinion, is very worthy to me of being in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And one of the things that he probably will not be inducted, but only because he's a running back and they start looking at your rushing totals. But when you look at his total offense, because your offense there, with the Vikings and how Tarkin and Bug Grant, how you use the offense, when you added how many catches, yards he had catching the ball and running the ball, he was a phenomenal athlete. He was a phenomenal athlete.
Barry, you are spot on. Whenever you get a running back that can catch over 60, 70 passes a year,
Yeah.
man, let me tell you something. You can have all the great wide receivers and all of those things and quarterbacks, but if you got a running back that's a threat to take it to the house from anywhere on the field, whether it's running or catching a swing pass out of the backfield, and that patenting the spin doctor move,
That
uh,
spin move was
without
phenomenal.
question, Chuck deserves to be in there, especially on the senior slate. By God, I hope that it doesn't take him as long as it took Ken Riley, and
Yep.
I hope he gets in so that he can smell his flowers while he
Yep. But
can.
anybody ever asked me, I'm voting for Chuck Foreman. Yep.
Amen.
Said it. Yep.
Amen.
Let me ask you, because you're also in the historically Black College Football Hall of Fame, and again, I forgot the years. if you were inducted before or after, but certainly one of my Buccaneer teammates, Parnell Dickinson. And I know you guys are good buddies because I know you both love to hit that white little dimple golf ball.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Without question. Parnell, one of the great quarterbacks in HBCU history. I was fortunate enough, like in 2021, I guess Parnell, I owe a lot to Parnell because he lobbied for me. He stood up for me and said, hey, wait a minute. Uh, the Black College Football Hall of Fame is more than offensive linemen, defensive linemen, D-backs, and quarterbacks and receivers. Say, hey, man, nothing happens in a game without the punters and kickers.
Yeah.
And he said Greg Coleman was a pioneer. Greg Coleman was a trailblazer. I wasn't the first African American to kick a football, but at that position, because most of those guys back in the day, Marlon Briscoe and all the other guys, they played other positions. But as a pure punter is something that I take, I relish. If there's one thing, Barry, that I hope to do before I close my eyes, is to see more African-American punters and place kickers in the National Football League. There are a couple of kids out there now that's doing a great job. One from a historically black college, Fort Valley State, Marquette King, who was with the Oakland Raiders and a few other teams. The kid is still kicking the ball, plays for the USFL and XFL, leading that league. I would hope that the influence that I have left to get more kids to debunk this myth, just like we had to do with the black quarterback and Doug and Shaq and Parnell that you talked about, didn't have the wherewithal to handle complex offenses. I want to see more African-American punters and kickers. And Barry, I'll tell you this. I did retire from the Vikings broadcast last year, 2 years ago, but I'm going back in the booth this weekend for Clark and Central State. It's a HBCU school.
Nice.
It's Clark's homecoming up in Atlanta.
Yep.
One of the guys had a conflict, and they said, Greg, can you help us out? Why not? I'm going back and going to have a great time.
Fantastic. God bless you.
Hey, Greg, I wanted to ask you a question here about your speaking business. I looked at your website, greatcoleman8.com, get a leg up on life, and you've got quite a few testimonials on there. What's that about? How do you how often you go do that and speak in front of groups, and maybe what's your favorite group you spoke in front of?
Well, anybody who will listen, but the message is simple. It's a word of encouragement. The message is to corporate, community, and ministry. And as a punter, one of the first things you had to do is stretch. You had to stretch your body, and you have to stretch your imagination. And I had to stretch my imagination many, many times because I was told, Greg, there are no black punters and kickers in the National Football League. I said, well, that ain't my problem. So I had to stretch my imagination. As a hurdler, world-class hurdler, I had to stretch first before I went over those obstacles. And life is full of obstacles. Once you get over one, man, you got to run like crazy between the next. And then as a punter, punting is looked at sometimes as a level of defeat or surrender or giving up. But believe it or not, it's a strategy, if teams use it correctly, to punt, flip the field, put your opponents in a tough position, and then you can get a leg up on life. Because punting, here are the 4 acronyms. P stands for push through your obstacles. You understand your strengths because God gave you something that he didn't give anybody else. And you got to navigate through the crap. We all are going to have crap and mountains that we got to climb. And I say, Matthew 17:20 says, if you have the faith the size of a mustard seed, you can move mountains. He'll give you the strength and the faith to either go through, around, over, or underneath whatever mountain that you might face. And then T, you got to take calculated risks. So the keynote is built around punting, teaching you how to punt. And there's some principles and rituals and habits that I learned during the course of 12 years as a a player in the National Football League, 21 years as a broadcaster, 24 years in corporate America. So you pull all of those offense, defense, special teams, and you deliver a message of hope, because hope is nothing but the gasoline that fuels your faith. And without faith, you have absolutely nothing. So that's what the speaking business is about. I do maybe 2 assignments a month. I've spoken, all over the country, all over the world, heading to South Africa again in a few days, for an assignment over there. And I just love to see the smile on somebody's face. Oh man, I never heard it that way. But thank you for sharing. Thank you for being here. Thank you for encouraging me. Thank you for letting your light shine.
Well, that's absolutely fantastic. And I think we'll just wrap it up on that, because I can tell you that those are great words of inspiration. So, ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to Mic'd Up Social, brought to you by Florida Sports Hall of Fame. And we are pleased that we had our athlete, humanitarian, man of God, and incoming class of 2023 Florida Sports Hall of Fame enshrinee, Greg Coleman. Greg, thank you so much for being on Mic'd Up Social with Barry Smith and I. We really appreciate it. Really learned a lot. Loved the conversation, and we're really looking forward to seeing you in November at the enshrinement in Jacksonville, Florida.
I'm looking forward to it as well, guys. And the book will be released in several weeks, November 4th. So you can go to the site and learn how to punt, flip the field, and get a leg up on life.
Well,
so what is that? What is the name of the book exactly? Now, make sure I understand. What is it? Flip the Field is the name of the book.
It's called Punt. Well,
Okay.
Before you flip the field, you got to punt first. So you You flip the field, and then you get a leg up on life.
Okay,
fantastic.
Hey, Greg, I'm putting my order in, because bring one of the books, because I want an personally autographed copy when you come to Jacksonville. All right.
You got it, my friend. I appreciate.
Yeah, you better bring a bunch of books to Jacksonville. I think it's going to be quite popular up there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Greg.
All right, guys.
Thank you very much, Greg. Thanks, Barry. And you've heard the episode of Mic'd Up Social Hall of Fame Conversation with Greg Coleman. Thanks, everybody. And listen in next time. Just download the Mic'd Up Social app, and you'll see where all the upcoming interviews are going to be. Thank you very much.